Hey everyone, I know I have not made a video, or come out with a video rather, in quite a while. I apologize for that. Just a lot of stuff at work and life and all of that. To help me play catch up, I'm grouping 3 into 1. Let's review Arrowverse from 2015 to 2016. We'll begin with Arrow Season 4. Now, the 4th season of Arrow is a slight improvement over Season 3. The biggest improvement, of course, is the main villain, who is played this season by Neil McDonough, who plays the role of Damien Darhk. The biggest reason, rather, this villain is so much better than the person I can't really call Ra's al Ghul, is just for the actor. Apologies to Matt Nable, but yeah, I just wasn't really impressed with his performance of Ra's al Ghul. It was very boring. Neil McDonough at least adds some charisma, adds some humor. He's a delight to watch on screen and steals every single scene. This season, Felicity Smoak was also improved. I don't know if the writers simply listened to fans' complaints or if they actually learned their lesson. There's a big difference. But having Felicity whine in order to create false tension is not really a good idea. It made a lot of fans, myself not included, I like to think I'm nicer, it made a lot of fans really want her character to be killed. To this day, you see a lot of people saying, why haven't they killed Felicity yet? This season she was much more tolerable. Even her relationship with Oliver, while still a product of fan-pandering shipping culture, was much more tolerable to watch. I'm not saying it felt 100% genuine or the characters had some of the best chemistry I've ever seen on screen, but it was watchable. I was able to accept it. The series also attempts to put a focus back onto Star City, like seasons 1 and 2 did, and the mission is to save the city. That was something season 3 lost focus of, and they're getting back to it. Until the end of the season where the plot all of a sudden becomes about nuking the entire world and that they have to stop that. And the way that gets resolved was very hacked, in which they make sure all the missiles blow up in midair. I think that's what happens. And that's something I see in a lot of fiction where it seems like, oh no, the nukes have been launched. Well, there's still time. We can activate the self-destruct. We just got to do it in time. My problem with that is I don't think that's a good thing either if they still blow up in the sky. I think you're supposed to prevent them from launching in the first place. I'm no environmental scientist, but I'm pretty sure if you blow up nuclear missiles in the air, especially if there's like dozens of them in the air all over the world, I still think that's going to be environmentally disastrous. I still think that's going to affect our air, it's going to affect our atmosphere, I still think there's going to be radiation that falls on the Earth. Also in this season, there's flashbacks, still. At least the flashbacks have Oliver back on the island. This time, the whole thing is about him playing with magic. While the flashbacks weren't as bad or as detached as they were in Season 3, I still hated them. Every time a flashback happened, it felt like a chore to sit through. Granted, they only last like 30 to 60 seconds. They don't last very long. But the fact that they're still there is annoying. They don't feel all that impactful. I kind of wish they would go away. And one of the reasons why I'm still watching this show is I'm curious in Season 6, are they going to do away with the flashbacks entirely? Because when Oliver was first stranded on the island, that was 5 years prior to the start of the series. Well, next season is Season 5. It's going to be about the last year he was on the island. At least we're assuming he's on the island in Season 5, unless he travels again and then just winds up back. So are they still doing those dopey-ass flashbacks afterwards? Is it going to be about some other character? The character work on this show is still not all that great. The writing is still very iffy. A lot of it just kind of feels meandering, more talk of themes, not really fully fulfilling of themes. The way Damien Darhk gets taken care of, albeit it was a lot more fulfilling than in Season 3, but it still felt like the way Ra's al Ghul was taken out. It's like, oh, he got stabbed. Wah, wah. And Oliver had to kill him. even though he's not killing people anymore, and he insists he doesn't want to kill people, but he kills the villain. Why? Because we have to take care of the villain somehow. So that was Arrow Season 4. Fun fact, this season it added a showrunner named Wendy Mericle, who helped fill in the showrunning duties, while Marc Guggenheim was also working on another DC Comics Arrowverse show, which we'll get to. Next up is The Flash Season 2. In the Arrowverse, it's still the best show. It's still better than Arrow, it's better than Legends, it's the best of the three. That being said, this season did take kind of a dip in quality. I'm going to shed the blame on a showrunner change that happened. I don't want to do it rudely, like this kind of thing happens. This season, Gabrielle Stanton, former consulting producer, got promoted to showrunner executive producer to help run the show with Andrew Kreisberg. However, she left midway through the second season to work on projects of her own. Also promoted to executive producer this season was brother writers Aaron and Todd Helbing. Now, if we're going to go by my theory of Supergirl getting better, Andrew Kreisberg, I think this is what happened. Andrew Kreisberg went to focus more efforts on Supergirl, and Aaron and Todd Helbing went to fill the void. Now, I'm not saying Aaron and Todd Helbing are bad writers or bad plotters, but there was a vision change. Clearly a change in vision from what it went on in the show. And as a result, there's some things that dipped in quality, and we'll get to those. But first, we're going to talk about the good things. The villain for this season is Zoom, and Zoom is terrifying. His appearance is terrifying. His voice, his gravelly, Darth Vader-ish voice, voiced by Tony Todd, fun fact, is terrifying. You know, every time he comes on screen, it's like, Zoom! This season also explored the multiverse, the idea of multiple universes that are similar to one another based on different possibilities. This season introduced a new Flash from another universe, except it wasn't Barry Allen. It's a guy named Jay Garrick, played by Teddy Sears. Cisco got to explore more of his admittedly convoluted but still cool, just go with it, vibing abilities. Iris discovers that she has a long-lost younger brother that she and Joe didn't know about, Wally West. See where that's going. Played by Keenan Linsdale. And at first, I wasn't really impressed with Lonsdale's performance of Wally. And I don't know if he just simply grew on me as I kept watching the show, or if his acting, if he felt more comfortable in his role. But I felt it like he wasn't really comfortable with his character at first, but as I kept watching, I learned to like it, learned to go with it. This season also brings Tom Cavanagh back to the show, but this time he plays an actual Harrison Wells instead of just playing the Reverse Flash as Harrison Wells, although you do see him in a time travel episode, which is actually pretty great, until the ending, which didn't really make sense and didn't really go anywhere. But Tom Cavanagh plays a Harrison Wells from another universe, a Harrison Wells that also has a daughter named Jessie. I still appreciate the tone of the show, which is fun, which is supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be lighthearted. However, during the second half, it did start getting unusually dark. Not quite in the dopey version of dark that Arrow does, but it still takes a dark turn, and that might have paid off if at least around that time when they did the Zoom reveal, that it actually made sense. So Zoom is revealed to be Jay Garrick, or who they knew to be Jay Garrick, and turns out to be this guy named Hunter Zolomon. And the way that worked is supposedly through this thing called the Time Remnant. And the way they explained it made it seem like you're creating a past version of yourself, or you caught up with the past version of yourself, and he is your double, and you both get to do things. The way they explained it actually didn't make a whole lot of goddamn sense, and I felt it was really, really poorly done. It really is the worst episode in this entire series. Zoom's reveal to the rest of the ensemble cast who he really is. At the very least, they should have just said something like time clone, like, oh, you create a speed mirage so strong that you create a double of yourself. At least that's what it looked like when Flash time remnants himself. Like, couldn't they just say that? Why couldn't they just say time clone? I mean, it sounds stupid, but then again, a lot of the time travel concepts on this show are objectively stupid, yet they go along with it and they just have a blast with it. But the whole time remnant thing didn't make a whole lot of fucking sense. Or they could have gone with that Zoom is Jay from another universe, or evil twin, or evil clone. I mean, those things sound very pulpy sci-fi, but it would have worked with the show, and it would have made a hell of a lot more sense. Now, granted, it probably wouldn't have made as much sense with the actual Jay Garrick reveal in the end of the season. You could have done away with that. Whatever, I don't care about that as much as I care about the actual reveal that took place. That was like really a low moment. Other highlights, this season had the episode that Kevin Smith directed, which was a really good episode. Kevin Smith did a great job. Again, granted, I don't know how much of that was actually Kevin Smith or just the way the show has always been directed. I mean, you know these TV shows, they get directors here and there, but they're essentially treated like technicians. One episode essentially looks the same as the one you watched before. Doesn't really matter what director is handling it. Because that's just how TV shows work. It has to maintain a consistency. But that being said, that particular episode was really cool. It reminded me a lot of episodes of Deep Space Nine when Captain Sisko would talk to the prophets. Except this time it was about Barry Allen essentially getting to talk to the sentient Speed Force. And it had a lot of heartfelt moments. That was a very refreshing watch. Hopefully this next season of The Flash, which is obviously going to do the Flashpoint storyline, aka the one Flash storyline everyone recognizes, including non-Flash fans. Like, just because you say, oh, Flashpoint, doesn't mean you're a fan of the Flash. I know what Flashpoint is. I mean, Flashpoint is a decent storyline to have on the Flash show. It was inevitable that they were going to do it. It just gets really overhyped because of this whole New 52 thing, which now DC Comics is completely going back on. Flashpoint, it's a wonderful life, but with superheroes. It's changing the past, which creates a different future, a horrible future, that wouldn't have been so horrible had the person not changed the past, thinking it was going to be better for him, and now has to go back and change it. Even though It's a Wonderful Life, it's, assumed that he wasn't actually changing the past, he was just seeing what it would have been like, he was just seeing a projection. But it's the same idea. I hope that Season 3 is more solid. I hope that they don't have the showrunner problem that they had. I hope the vision is more consistent. I hope they have a better idea of what they're going to do. I hope they have that in mind, considering that Season 2, because of that episode I was talking about, got a lot of hate, including from former Flash writer Mark Waid, of which Greg Berlanti had to respond, no, don't worry. It'll make sense. It'll be better when you see how it unfolds. But that kind of response, I hope, would motivate the writers to make sure they don't screw up like that, since a lot of people see Flash as sort of the crown jewel of DC Comics television right now. And with good reason. It's still fun. It's the one Arrowverse show I am looking forward to watching the most. Now, finally, let's get to the baby of the bunch. Legends of Tomorrow. DC's Legends of Tomorrow. That's in the title. It's created by Greg Berlanti, Andrew Kreisberg, Marc Guggenheim, and Phil Klemmer. Whew, so many cooks in the kitchen cooking that pilot episode, which was a disaster. The pilot episode sucks to this series. I had such low hopes after watching that 2-part pilot. I remember thinking, Supergirl was the bad one? At least Supergirl had, character development, and it had a good villain. And I was surprised that this pilot was 2 hours long, albeit aired in 2 parts over the course of 2 weeks, but it was called Pilot Part 1 and Pilot Part 2. The character development wasn't quite there. It felt like it was doing too much too fast for the time that was being allotted unto itself. The rest of the series, it balanced out a lot better. It had a bad start, but the rest of the series is okay. The plot of Legends of Tomorrow is essentially if Doctor Who had 8 really badass companions equipped for a sci-fi fantasy setting. This guy named Rip Hunter, played by former Doctor Who companion Arthur Darvill, assembles essentially the B Justice League team. All these recurring characters / supporting characters that you formerly saw on Flash and Arrow, now being repurposed, now being brought together, because some reason Rip Hunter doesn't want to use the other heroes, but I guess they're too important for their time that he just gets these people that no one will miss. He brings them together saying, hey, there's this immortal villain that's going to murder my wife and kid and take over the world 150 years from now. I need your help to stop him. We're going to travel through time, try to stop him at every turn, and that's going to be our adventure. The visual effects on this show look great. Every time the Wave Rider timeship flies around, it's so cool to watch. The episodes of the show are kind of a hit and miss. I'm going to get to that in the bag. I'm actually going to get to how this show is paced in a larger point I'm going to make out about all the DC shows on the CW, because they also kind of have the same problem. This is a really great cast. Everyone works well with one another, and the writers definitely like to play around with pairing unlikely people with each other to see how they bounce off one another. Out of all the Arrowverse shows, this has the best cast. This is the best cast, and this has the not only cast of actors, but the best cast of characters. It makes really good use out of all these characters as characters. The only thing it doesn't make really good use of is how to use in battle Heatwave and Captain Cold. Now, Captain Cold has a cold gun, and essentially works the same way as Mr. Freeze's cold gun, in which it freezes people. As in, you shoot it, ice comes out, people get frozen in ice. Heatwave has a gun that's a flamethrower, and essentially if you use it, you're gonna set someone on fire. So why is it on this show, when they shoot either of their guns against opposing bad guys, the bad guys look like they just got stunned in the chest, they fly backwards, get on the ground, and they don't come back up again? Why is it that their guns work like Star Trek phasers? That's essentially how useful they are in this show. They just work like Star Trek phasers. And that's the only way they're really used, to my memory. I don't think I actually remember them using their weaponry for anything clever. It's a rhetorical question of why they do that. It's a question I actually know, or at least I have a good idea about, and it's budget. It probably takes a lot of money and a lot of time to make sure you have a bunch of extras with flame suits on that are ready to get set on fire, or get a bunch of special effects ready in order to make it look like a bunch of people got frozen in ice. That probably takes a bunch of time, so it's a lot easier just to make it look like they're getting stunned with the phaser. I get it. Budgetary constraints. Can't let that be used as an excuse, though. Like, I don't know, maybe there's a piece of machinery that only a cold gun could make better, or maybe a heat wave gun could work so much better on. I mean, I like these two guys. I like Wentworth Miller and Dominic Purcell when they're on screen together. They have such a great back and forth, and their characters are so well realized on this show, even better than the way they were done in Flash. But the way they're utilized in fight scenes feels very underwhelming, and it feels very undeserving of these characters. I mean, if you want them shooting phasers, then just give them phasers. Don't have them use their guns. Even though it won't make sense for their characters, whatever. So overall, the first season of Legends of Tomorrow is a bit rough around the edges, but it has some good here and there, and I hope the writers, run by Marc Guggenheim and Phil Klemmer, along with executive producer Chris Fadak, I hope the writers figure out how to make it more polished for next season. But there's a really big problem that I had with this season of Legends of Tomorrow, and it's a problem that I've noticed in the other Arrowverse shows because of Legends. It's very obvious in Legends, but it's noticeable in the other shows as well. And that's kind of the way they're paced. Now, a lot of people like to blurt out a solution that says, well, the problem is that they have 23 episodes, and you can't tell a good storyline with 23 episodes. It gets stretched out. It slows down too much. You have to add in a bunch of filler episodes and all of that. They should just use the cable model with 13 episodes, or 6 episodes, or 10 episodes like Game of Thrones. CW's renewed these shows for 23 episodes, and that's their model. They're going to produce 23 episodes a year. That's fine. The problem is not how many episodes the season has, it's how they paced them. And it's because they don't have enough Story of the Week episodes. Now, when someone says Story of the Week, a bunch of TV snobs that don't really know what the fuck they're talking about say, oh, you mean filler episodes? Filler episodes are bad because they have to fill in that time, and it's, they should just cut the fluff out. And I absolutely disagree. Filler episodes can be great. Heck, most of the good episodes of Legends of Tomorrow were actually the filler episodes. The ones that weren't about Vandal Savage. Like the one about Star City, where you have Stephen Amell with the dumb beard on and just shooting arrows with one arm. That was a cool episode because it took a break from the main plot, which was good because I didn't think the main plot was that well done due to the fact that you have a villain that doesn't time travel. The only way he seems to be present in whatever time period they're in is because he's immortal. And every time they encounter him, it seems like our characters have too much cowardice or too much stupidity to do what needs to be done. Until the third to last episode of the season, when they actually do capture him and try to study him and figure out how to kill the bastard. They had a chance in the third episode in which they had him stabbed, immobilized for a few minutes, and I was thinking, why don't you just take him aboard your ship and experiment with him? You know, or keep him out of time, or whatever. And of course, the reason they don't do that in episode 3 is because they have all this other time to fill in. And it would end their main plot too early. Just simply our characters don't think of that idea, and they walk away. And they go to some other time period in which Vandal Savage is going to fuck something up again. And I think they could have avoided that problem if maybe Vandal Savage was less present on the show. They keep trying to show him in like over half the episodes of this season of Legends of Tomorrow. Whereas I think his purpose should have been like a guy pulling strings behind the shadows. Someone that's really in charge, but is not that much encountered by our main characters. And the same goes with Zoom on this season of The Flash and Damien Dark on this season of Arrow. They're too present. And as a result, it makes it feel like the plot is moving too slowly because they keep encountering these villains and they can't really seem to stop them until the season ends because that's where it has to go. If I was writing, I wouldn't even really introduce the villain. Like, full on introduce their full appearance until halfway through the season. I would have the start of the season be like some, what snobs call filler episodes, but stories of the weeks. At least with stories of the week, you can focus on internal character development. There's a villain around, but you can have an episode just be about that villain, and maybe the villain can have an actual arc. A lot of the standalone villains in these shows don't really have good arcs. They're just kind of things to fight that do bad things. Hell, you can take Star Trek's model. Star Trek Next Generation realized during its third season that you gotta do character-centered episodes in order to keep the show going, because that's what will resonate with the audience. And if these shows are going to insist on having kind of an ensemble model, especially Legends, then you gotta have kind of a, okay, this is a Black Canary episode, this is a Heat Wave and Captain Cold episode, this is specifically this character's episode. You gotta do that on, okay, this episode is going to be about Caitlin. This episode is more so going to be about Thea than anything else. And the way you do that is have the plot of that episode somehow tie in with the character arc of the specific character you chose. You do that for a little bit, and then you do this little thing that Russell T Davies did with Doctor Who before Stephen Moffat took over Doctor Who and made it all pretentious. But what I liked about the Russell T Davies, aka the David Tennant years of Doctor Who, was that you'd have the standalone stories. The stories of the weeks that are so dreaded by most TV fans nowadays for some dumb reason. But there are little hints dropped here and there. Hints that will eventually culminate into this big season finale that happens in the end. The season finale that represents the entire season plot. Like it was all leading up to this. That's why the first season of The Flash works so well. Because the Reverse Flash was this mystery villain. This villain that didn't do too much. And you didn't know that much about. Well, okay, near halfway through you figured out it was Harrison Wells. Or did you? But even then, you still didn't know that much. He operated in the shadows and didn't really come super duper present until towards the end. That's what made that first season of The Flash work so fucking well. And in the meantime, you had standalone stories, you had goofy episodes with goofy villains, and that's what made The Flash so fun. And if you're going to have a TV show about people that travel in a ship through space and time, why don't you do what other TV shows have done with devices like that travel either through space or time or both? You have standalone stories, but then maybe drop little crumbs here and there that build up, that actually has build up in order to make that season finale look more special. Otherwise, if you keep showing the villain every week or two, it's going to get old really quick. It's not the episode count that's the problem. It's how they've decided to pace it. That's an issue. And I don't know if that's going to change. I know that's kind of how a lot of CW shows operate. Not Supernatural. I'd say Supernatural is like the one exception, because even then they have times where they do standalone episodes. Even today, they still have great standalone episodes, and that's why that show is still on. I hope that Flash, Arrow, Legends realize that, sometimes you gotta slow down. Take it back a notch. Trust that the audience is gonna be patient. Sometimes the audience doesn't care as much about the main plot. They just want to watch a fun episode. I hope that makes sense. I'm going to watch all these shows next year. I'm going to try my best to watch all these shows. Hopefully I can keep up. And Supergirl is coming to that network, so I'm going to have DC shows 4 nights a week. Hope it's fun. I hope they don't fuck it up. I hope they don't blow their wad too quickly. Anyway, thanks for sticking through my very long review of 3 different television shows for this season, and I will see you next time. Bye.